Might as well discuss what the plan is for these. I've got a mountain of parts to sort through after I make sure everything's working, get Red Planet working on them as well as Battletech Firestorm. Then I'm going to make these move ready by chopping the bottoms off of them and adding casters on them. That way it lowers them below the 7 foot of most doors so I can get them in and out of facilities easy. After that, once I get these two done, then I will go back to my buddy's house, pull two from his, change them out for these two, bring them back, and then we will do the exact same to those. Should be a lot smoother since we'll be bench testing just about every component here and make sure they work on these. I took this next week off from work as a vacation to work on just these two, and my plan is to throw a barbecue at the end of the week for my buddies and a bunch of folks who remember these. And hopefully I get them by that time. I get them up and running and everything's fine. And then once I get all 6 running, I do have a lead on a couple other simulators that I can pop over and get a couple more pods that we have a full set of 8. I want to start talking to Pop Culture Con and NDK, Starfest, and a few of the other Colorado conventions to hopefully bring these by for a weekend, just like some of the other side owners are doing. Down in Texas, MechCore is one of the bigger ones. Up in Michigan, Nick said there's numerous owners that do it, and it's great for the nostalgia. People like to go to the convention, see these, get inside play. There's plenty of photos online of them, of people in cosplay playing in these, and it's great stuff. Would anybody like to explain to me why 6 pods require 8 spare reverse buttons? Anybody out there need reverse buttons? I've got plenty. We already have our newest pilot. What you think? Yeah, is it pretty cool? Not a litter box. That's what the inside looks like. You have your radar screen, you have your main screen, left MFD, right MFD, top left, top middle, top right, which you can barely see. Jasmine's wanting to pilot. Yes, the joystick is in backwards. The reason that the joystick is in backwards at the moment is to show and remind me that the bolt that holds the two halves together that's underneath the joystick is not in yet. And if you're wondering what I've been sorting, we have a ton of buttons, LEDs, micro switches, optic encoders, bolts, you name it, and I have many more to go. There's supposed to be a Virtual World sticker. You're supposed to have a V-hoop and say Virtual World. A couple of them just only have the V-hoop. Well, going through these boxes, I found 3 of the decals that actually say Virtual World. So this is quite a neat find. It'll be fun to put these back on if I can get it to actually go on straight, but looks like some of the players are already showing up for tonight's campaign. But this really dresses the pot up. It's missing the nose art that goes here, which I've got a buddy who's actually out at an event that I wish I was at, for Oktoberfest, out of Michigan. But this is what it looks like with the Virtual World sticker on. This is Josh, he helped us. Anyway, it looks a lot better. We got the nose arts coming to go here. So Roger will get that, and I'll start tomorrow with building them. Hey folks, so day 1 of the vacation. It is Sunday, and our goal today is going to be tearing apart this pod. We're going to check all the wiring, try and clean as much as we can, check all the fans, make sure everything is clear of debris and is able to spin properly on as far as the fans. There is one in the cabin above that shoots up that is usually filled with dust. There are 2 on the top of this cabinet that point out and 2 on the bottom that intake. And then there's also one at the very top up here that shoots up. The issue with the fans is in this cabinet, which houses the main monitor as well as the beam splitter, there is no ventilation in here for this main monitor. It is a 19-inch CRT, so it can get rather warm. Question here is, do I want to drill a hole in the top and put a fan to blow out and up? The issue with that is it leaves this cabinet open for dust to go onto the mirror. So that might be a mod we do later, but for right now we're going to just try and get these as cleaned as possible, and maybe we'll fire one up today. Okay, I wanted to show you all what this looks like in here. Let's see the joystick. There's one of the MFDs, the radar screen, the other MFD. The main screen is here, and it looks like a giant void. Right now all three top MFDs are out, and you can see some of the wiring right on up there. This is the top fan I was telling you about, and you can see it caked on dirt all along this. I took the seat out. You can see some of the speakers along the back, the tweeters and the mids, all the way down. You can see the wear out on the paint here. So I'll be touching that up. Throttle is over here. And then all these wires run underneath through that hole all the way up through the front. Foot pedals are down there. You can see a couple spare wires. Those are for the video, for the secondary. Yeah, so what we're going to do is, this is a perfectly clean, brand new towel. We're going to see what that looks like as soon as I finish cleaning. So that was one pass of just getting all the dirt up. I used the drill brush to kick up a bunch from the floor. Anyway, this is the top fan. As you can see, no dust now comes out of it. It's pretty dang clean. Our brand new clean rack, after just one pass in that pod, now looks like this. That was brand new white, and that's just after one pass only. So as you can tell, they're filthy, and that's only one pod. So I will be attempting to run the wiring now, and then we'll do another secondary cleaning. I took the seat out so I could easily get to everything in the pod. I took the top fan out and the screen for it and vacuumed everything out. So the pod now smells lemon leaf fresh, but I think it needs more freedom. So I will more than likely be buying a bunch of Punker Branding's matte characters on a shark, because they're black ice, and that's what I love. I love that scent, and I put that in my truck. But I might put that and hide it up top, and that way the pods smell even nicer. This is inside the main tech bay. So this is where the PC goes. You can see there's serial ports, VGA lines, power lines, everything in here. There's the three fans that blow out. Then you come down to the audio. So there's the amp for the speakers and the power supply for it. And then you have the Rio interface board. Then down below is the main power block, power distribution. All of this gigantic heavy block can be replaced by a modern power supply. But what we're going to do is we are going to attempt to power it up and make sure that everything gets power. I do not obviously have the PC in, but I do have the fans should turn on. I made sure the Rio, the serial line for the Rio is not plugged in. Again, quiet noise coming from up there. Rio's got power. That's good. And you can see how clean this inside bay is now. And that one's not spinning because it's not hooked up. You can see the monitors kicking on. That's good news. We're going to fix the wire rubbing. Alright, let's start talking about some of the components here. So the door rail goes across this here. As you can see, I gave it a quick wipe, but it still needs more. The mistake that a lot of folks make is that it should be this bolt, which is 7/16, and it should have the bolt, then 1 to 2 washers, then the rail, then the head with another washer. The final washer on top of the rail is not necessary. Sometimes it'll bind up the door slide, but you do need it spaced away. So that's one of the things that a lot of folks make a mistake of. The same goes for the bottom rail. So on the bottom rail, you can see here that this is installed improperly because there are no washers behind it to space it out. Therefore, the door rubs against all of this along here. The paint, I went ahead and redid it. You can see it's still drying, but it will color match very nice, especially since this will all be dark. So I cleaned all that up and I got rid of all the scratches along here. So it's starting to look much better. The handle, I'm thinking I'm going to wrap it in yellow caution tape, just so folks know where to grab to get out. But it's cleaning up really nice. The rag is getting blacker and blacker. The joystick, this is what the joystick looks like when it's out. It is an 8-button joystick. These are typical half-control joysticks. They do run optic encoders instead of potentiometers. So your 8 buttons are a trigger, your top, which is your missiles, lower thumb, pinky, and then a 4-way hat switch. So this is fun to bench test. This model of joystick is actually the later one. The earlier one has a spring that comes down out of this ring that holds down. It is a much smoother operation for the pilots themselves, and the players actually prefer it. The problem with it is that the joystick under the old one is one single mold. So trying to run these wires through it is a pain because you have no room to do it. This, the later, separates. So from a tech standpoint, this joystick is amazing. It is easy to work on. You can bench test it, completely separate the top, and redo the whole thing, testing all wires and everything. It's really quick and easy. This one, when you move it to side, you can see it. The springs themselves, this one's actually pretty smooth, but the springs are actually housed inside this barrel here, so they're actually, like, there's one spring right behind this plate, there's another one behind this plate. You can actually kind of see them in there. So as it goes, it compresses that spring. You can see it's kind of jerky. You can kind of go, but it's not as smooth and fluent. The other ones have this giant spring down here that is even all the way through. The difference between a potentiometer and an optic encoder, I'll discuss optic encoders. Optic encoders have a disc inside with a whole bunch of little lines, and there's actually a reader in there that counts the number of lines as it goes. So as you move this over, it will count, 5, 6 lines as it goes over, so it knows how far you've moved it. Then as you move it back. These problem with these is if they're not centered when it powers up, it thinks that wherever it powers up is centered, unlike potentiometers. But wiring through the bottom is done. I'm about to do the wiring up top after I get the seat back in. The other thing I wanted to talk about with the seat, this is a common failure point with a lot of the pods. Very common arcade seat. This handle is what you use to adjust the seat, forward and backward. How you want to adjust it is by pulling this to the side. Players will grab this and yank it up, thinking that's how they do it, and they put an immense amount of strain on these back 2 bolts up and to where they'll actually shear them completely off. So that's what you do with the seat. You can easily re-drill and tab and then put those in. So next we're going to attempt to work on this rat's nest. Anytime you're working on these top 3 MFDs, they're all linked together on one really long ribbon cable. So if you're pulling out any of these and you go to cinch them back in, if you accidentally pinch the ribbon cable, you will blow who knows how much stuff. It could be button boards in any one of these 3, it could be the Rio, it could be chips, it can be numerous things. So it is imperative that when you do this, you make sure that you are not pinching any ribbon cable. These right here, this bundle that's above my head, that goes over the spine. This goes to the speakers behind you. There's a small power for the fan up here, so that's these 2. Then you've got the main screen display. This is the board to adjust the main screen. You've got, for your MFD, you've got these 2 plus a ribbon cable. Then you've got this one for your radar screen to adjust its board. You got the keypad, and you've got the display for the plasma for the Rio. So all that is here. It all fits into this small cubby. So the way that I typically start it is get the 2 over the top and get them up and out of the way. Feed over any of the stuff that goes for the 2 adjuster boards up top, as well as the plasma. Then I'll do the keyboard that comes down here, then feed the 3 wires for the MFD and have them sitting here, and then I'll put the whole facade over it, the shroud rather. That all goes over. When you go to do the shroud, make sure that the lip is on the top on each side of the MFD housing. Otherwise, when you go to put the MFD in, it's going to be extremely difficult. It's going to catch, it's going to be really tight, and then you can't get it out or back in. Anytime you do the top MFDs, I highly recommend that you do the 2 bolts that hold them in. The reason being is there is this handle right here that people can grab to get out. It's difficult to see, hence why I was talking about putting the caution tape on it. The other thing is people will grab this MFD here to get out of the pod. They see this handle, they'll just instinctively reach up with their hand and grab the first thing they feel, and they'll pull the entire MFD. Well, if you only have one bolt in this, it's possible that it'll strip that, and then they pull this whole thing out and they smack themselves in the face. So really make sure that you have both the bolts in the top MFD. The bottom ones can just have the single, which is fine because they are facing up, but all three of the top should have that. This will be against using power tools on any of this because it is just into particle board, and I highly recommend you don't use power tools. But in my case, I used it on the joystick and a few other minor places, but I had the torque way down. But just be really careful because you can strip it very easily. Anyway, enjoy. I'm going to start wiring. So as you can see now, the entire bay is buttoned up. All the screens are in, wires are completely done. The two for the joystick, the two optic encoders run underneath. For the joystick, the single for the throttle runs underneath, as well as the ribbon cable for the button board for the reverse and eject button, which are on the same button board. And then the large one, the other ribbon cable for the 8 buttons on the joystick. All those run underneath the pod and up into the tech bay. Then I got all of the top MFDs reattached. What I'm going to do now is finish cleaning all the optics inside. Then I'm going to remove the optic panel itself, and I'm going to clean the beam splitter. And if you take shortcuts, you take a chance of scratching your beam splitter, and then it looks like crap. So I'm going to clean the inside, and then we'll start working on dismantling the optic bay. Alright, so this is the optic bay. The way this works is the main CRT is right here. It shines down on this, which is what we call beam splitter, and on this side of it there's an oil that if your skin touches it, it'll make it look like there's scratches. It goes onto this bent mirror, which if I move the camera over you can see it a little bit better. You can see that whole mirror. So the pilot who sits on this end here and is looking straight through, they look through this piece of glass here and they see onto this mirror, and the whole image is actually bent and distorted, which is, well, it's not distorted, but it's bent, so as you move your head you actually see everything. So this is what the optic bay looks like. The problem with folks that go to clean this is if they're not careful, they will scratch the ever-living crud out of the beam splitter here, and all the oil will come off and it'll look all scratchy, and it just really throws off the optics. With the oil intact, it just looks so nice. Even though the graphics are outdated, it still looks really nice. So you can see on this one, it is coated with dirt, and I'll pull it over so you can see a little bit more. But there is just dirt and everything because this whole piece was on its side flat when we moved it. Then of course I had to stand it back upright, so all the dust kicks off from up in the monitor here and falls down onto the beam splitter and all throughout the cabinet. So to clean this, you have to first dust off lightly everything out of this, throw away the towel, then do the next, all the way down to microfiber cloths, but always change out your towels quickly. Never touch your skin to it. So the first step in how I go about cleaning the optics bay is I'll normally get a big old thing of paper towels, and I will only let the weight of the paper towel touch the beam splitter, and I'll pull across and get off any of the dirt, put onto a new clean side, pull across, get off any of the dirt. Of course I'm only putting the weight of the paper towel until all that's off. Now these are the cheap paper towels that leave behind a lot of residue, but that's irrelevant at the moment. So again, avoid skin contact. If you do touch with your skin, immediately wipe it off. Spray and wipe it. Get it off there. So, the interesting thing about this pod is the main mirror has a little chip out of it at the very top. That won't impede anything as far as optics, because it is up out of the way of the player's view range. But it is interesting. That's the first one I've ever seen with a big old chunk out of it. But I'm going to put this back together, that way no more dust gets in here. You see the dilemma though, if I do change out and put a fan going up, more dust will come down onto this, then you have to clean it more. As you move these, obviously, they rattle, they move, dust will fall. But there you go. I'm going to put it back together now. So, cosmetically, everything is hooked up as far as the pod. The only thing that's remaining is the PC. So, I'm going to go ahead and hook that up. I am going to end up clear coating all the stickers after I get the nose art from Roger. But all wires are hooked up with the exception of the PC and the lights. I'll do those at a later time. Since I found that extension cord, I'll probably chop that and use that to do the bottom light. If I decide to, it's not necessary. We'll go ahead and hook up the PC and then build the console and see if we can play our first game. Okay guys, so here's where we stand. This pod, joystick works, throttle works, foot pedals work, lower 2 MFDs work, and radar screen works. The issue with the CRT and the screen is that it has this ever slow crawl to the left, and it's actually a capacitor that needs to be redone. Top 3 MFDs, the middle and the top right, video on them is perfectly fine, and the top left has a V-hold issue. Now I have moved the CRTs to different ones. It is following the wiring, so I have to now troubleshoot that. The big issue is the Rio board. I went ahead and did a bench test with a line that I made and took good working button boards, ran it off of the output that goes to the upper 3, tested it with this, and it follows that the Rio board has a bad COM on that port. So I'm going to have to pull the Rio board and see if I have a chip to change it out for. I'll probably give my buddy a call since he has a soldering station and mine is gone. If not, I do have 2 other Rio boards, and I'll see if I can maybe parts one and together to make it work. Otherwise, good first day. I was able to play a first game. The pod smells so much better. There's not so much dust. I mean, I'm covered in dirt and dust, but it is getting kind of late, so I'm going to go ahead and go eat dinner. And we have one of them pretty much cleaned and ready to go and prepped. Tomorrow I will work on troubleshooting the Rio as well as the video issue on the top left MFD. The main screen is also kind of dark, and I tried using the control board that goes with it, and every time I use it, it shorts out. So I'm going to have to look at the primary adjusters that are on the actual CRT and see if I can adjust the guns there. Anyway, thank you so much. We're coming along. Not a bad first day. Was able to get one powered up and running. So take care. See you tomorrow.